All right. Jeff Swearingen. Patrick Updike.
Present.
Dave Anderson.
Here.
Marty Smith.
Present.
Tom Lampy.
Present.
John Benson. Jeff Franklin. Andy Buffington. Ellen Hagan.
Present.
Michelle Bischoff.
Present.
David Ness. Jason Leonard.
Here.
Rob Rotter.
Here.
Michael Casper.
Here.
Carol Lund Smith. Larry Smith.
Present on the phone.
And Angela Clauser. And we do have a quorum.
Thank you. We could start with the introduction of board members. Go ahead on the phone. Larry, if you want to start us off.
Larry Smith, Katy County Emergency Management.
Is anybody else on the phone for board member? Okay, let's start down there.
Carol Lund Smith, Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Marty Smith, Iowa Department of Public Health.
David Anderson, Iowa Department of Transportation.
Michelle Bischoff, City of Des Moines.
Jason Leonard, Waverly Police Department.
Tom Lampy, DPS.
Chris Myers on the SWIC.
Patrick Updike, Iowa Department of Corrections.
Ellen Hagan, Joe Fire and Rescue, representing volunteer firefighters.
Mike Casper, Lynn County Sheriff's Office.
Rob Rotter, Iowa County Sheriff.
John?
John Benson, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Dave Ness, one please. Joe Swanson, Iowa Department of Natural Resources.
I think our CIO just walked in. We're just going through the introductions, if you would.
Jeff Franklin with Office of the CIO.
Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone. Need the approval of, if I'm looking for approval of today's agenda, if I could get a motion for that, please.
So moved.
Okay, Michelle, have a second?
Second.
Second, Ellen. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the meeting minutes from March 14th, 2019. If I could get a motion for approval on that, please.
So moved.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, I'll have you second it. How about that?
All right, I'll second the
Second by
motion.
Casper. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. SWIC report.
All right. Thank you, Chair Lampy. April has been a busy month, but the update will be somewhat abbreviated because it's interest of time. Presented at the NENA conference last week regarding the board's activities over the past year or so and the build out of the network. I think the presentation went pretty well. There was quite a few people in attendance as well. That was last Monday on the 1st. I have an update on some status board work that we've been doing as well. We've had some discussions recently with Minnesota's contract people. They are working on some follow-up activity after their meeting on Wednesday internally, and it sounds like their contract person is making some final additions to it. In theory, we could have that language as early as Monday based on what they've told me. So once we have that language for the transfer of the source code for status board and that contract looks agreeable, we could start the process of allocating server space and hosting for it so that we'll have that means of communicating to end users and PSAPs what resources are available and what resources may be busy at the moment as well. On to the interstate interoperability pieces. We've had meetings now with every single one of our surrounding states, and so far they've all gone pretty well. We'll have a meeting with Illinois later today and Wisconsin tomorrow. At this point, we're in a spot where I can report that we have, at a minimum, verbal agreements on users from Iowa being able to join neighboring state systems for interoperability and their users joining ours for interoperability as well. This could be something like in-field subscriber unit programming. It could be access at the PSAP level. It kind of runs the gamut of possible connections with our neighboring states. In summary for each state, I'll keep this relatively brief. Missouri has agreed to basically reciprocate everything that we're doing. So that's very, very positive. Missouri's a blended VHF and 700 system, so any radio that works on our system will work on quite a bit of their infrastructure that they're deploying now, which is all in 700 meg also. South Dakota, they're open to reciprocating basically everything as well. They're primarily a VHF system, so there's some nuances with that. We've kind of got the established process with Minnesota now. They're an 800 meg system. And then with today's meeting with Illinois, my hope is that we can kind of finesse some of the draft language that we've been working on with an understanding agreement between the two states and hopefully start moving some of those things on to the user group committee. Tomorrow's meeting with Wisconsin, I'm expecting that to go pretty smoothly as well, and I think we'll probably end at a similar area that we are now with some of our other states. We're still working on some of the early outlook items with Nebraska, but I think we'll make progress with that over time, especially once we get their system administrators more involved with the process. On to TIA and TR8 activities. There's a new standard that's up for approval now that I'm reviewing. Basically, it revolves around the actual creation of a standard regarding digital signals and how they interact with antennas and how they're supposed to measure that, as opposed to just leaving it out there for open interpretation. That document's 60-plus pages long, so I'm reviewing that now. I will try to have that hammered out sometime on Friday. Otherwise, that's basically all I have at this point. I'll take any questions.
Chris, for simplicity, what would be for the interstate interoperability amongst our other states? Is there any thought about what is going to be the common talk group used, just for keeping it simple? That's going to be used because, so if you're going north, I got to use this one. If I'm going, is there one for the officer or the ambulance or anybody on this that is simple that everybody goes to this one? How's that going to work?
So some of the early discussions going back to August of 2018 with some of our regional committee meetings when we discussed that, we looked at several scenarios, possibly doing a talk group for every state, you know, basically kind of the Minnesota-Iowa talk group or the Illinois-Iowa talk group. We looked at the possibility of doing that. For now, the feedback from the RICs initially was, let's start with the pool of talk groups that we've already allocated that are on the fleet map, like the regional calling, and start with saying, you know, hey, if we need to hail someone, we can use the regional calling. If we need to make an announcement, we could do that as well. So also where we're kind of going with this is figuring out what each state does for answering point to answering point communications. And if there's not a process in place now, helping build one. And whether that's done with conventional frequencies or a trunk system like Isicsb, there's that. But for now, it looks like everything's going to start with the state pool of talk groups, and if we need to build it up from there, we could.
So how would that work with the state pool of talk groups working with their talk groups?
So the way it's kind of envisioned now, or at least kind of the early process, is that if they needed to, say, let the neighboring PSAP know that there's a pursuit coming in, and let's say it's an example of Iowa going into Minnesota, that Iowa PSAP is going to have the Minnesota regional calling talk group. They'll use that to let Minnesota know that it's coming. In reverse, Minnesota will let us know that something's coming on our regional also.
So if that county up north has got a control station, because they're VHF, they would patch that into something so their officer could
Here, yep.
hear it?
Yep.
So that would, okay.
Yep, that's kind of where we're going. We don't have all the finite processes and standards laid out in detail just yet. A lot of the early meetings have been, hey, let's introduce ourselves, let's acknowledge that we all exist, and let's start working on an agreement so we can start those more in-depth discussions. And in some cases, we're pretty far along, like with Minnesota. My expectation is that when we meet with Minnesota in a couple weeks again, we'll probably start talking about pursuits exclusively.
Okay. So. Anybody else? All right. We'll move on to the 911 council report. There he is.
Good morning. Let me first express happy 911 Education Month, and Telecommunicator Week is actually next week, so appreciate those efforts of anyone in the room or anywhere in the state of Iowa. Today at the council meeting, the council did update their bylaws, which will allow for participation of council members telephonically, so kind of mirrored what the Isicsb board does. So we'll have members on the phone being able to vote and everything. That was an updated determination by our Attorney General. Another thing I briefed out on, and I apologize, I wasn't here last week or last month, and I briefed this previously. We are going to be undergoing a 911 peer assessment. This is a program by the National 911 Office. It actually measures us on 87 different measurables. They're kind of categorized: statutory and regulatory, governance, functional and operational planning, standards, security, continuity of operations, human resources and training, evaluation, public education, and next generation 911 maturity model. That'll be a significant amount of work. So I've already farmed some of that stuff out to local folks and subject matter experts to help me pull that documentation and help us do a kind of a pre-test on ranking ourselves on where we fall. The message from the 911 office is we're not supposed to pass this with flying colors. You basically can't pass all 87 measurables. You just can't. Some of the stuff that they grade you against is kind of futuristic, if you will. But it kind of gives us a good roadmap or to use as a strategic planning document going forward. Not necessarily for things for the state to undertake in the future. Some of them might be perfectly local issues to take on in the future, but gives us a good idea of where we're at and where we need to go. We'll be the third state in the nation to undertake that effort. So the evaluators will be here in around September, and that would definitely be a public meeting. Stakeholders, 911 community would be invited to that to hear their feedback. So definitely a lot of work ahead of us, but I think it'll be beneficial in the long run. Another thing that I couldn't update you on last month, the 911 Council a number of months ago stood up a 34A committee, basically to look holistically at Iowa Code 34A and try to figure out what, if anything, could be changed, tweaked, kind of just what if a lot of different scenarios on how that statute is currently written and how it could end up looking. So those notes were finalized last month and went out. And based on those notes and those meetings, we're going to continue to meet at the end of the month. Tracy Bearden heads up that committee if anyone's interested. And then finally, another subcommittee of the 911 Council is a new one that's a training committee. And I know you all have a training committee as well. This is focused, it seems like there's a lot of consensus that there's some sort of gap when it comes to 911 and training. Certainly there's the 40-hour telecommunicator course, and we're not trying to step on any toes or reinvent the wheel, but more focused on PSAP leadership. It might be, surcharge-based or how networks work within 911. So Jamie Robinson heads up that committee, met earlier in April, and will meet continuing again in May. But kind of identify those gaps and maybe make recommendations or develop training on their own, again, specifically towards 911, telecommunicators, and PSAP leadership. So, any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll move on to the user group. I've been told Chair Buffington's a little busy this morning, so I think Rob is going to do it for us today.
Good morning, Rob Benner, Vice Chair of the UGC. The RIC committees, Region 1 continues to engage legacy system users and hold discussions on transition process. Region 3 has been talking with the State Patrol on interoperability with the locals and talk group sharing. Region 5, Van Buren County just completed local coverage testing, was very pleased. There are 5 applications for your review today, 3 new ones and 2 updated. Also, some discussion about the UGC and board creating a repository for documents to be able to share applications, particularly with all those that are involved. And I think the Standards Committee has an update on a couple new standards. Questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Finance. Chair Hagan.
Monthly net expenditures during March for the Interoperable and Broadband Communications Fund were $11,882. The March ending balance was $190,382. Monthly expenditures during March for the SLIC P 2.0 were $12,376, Of that amount, $9,901 were federal expenditures. The remaining federal amount available from the grant is $103,352. Senate Study Bill 1255 currently has a statewide interoperable communications appropriation receiving $115,661 in fiscal year 2020. This amount matches the governor's recommendation. We have a question for the board. Would you like the Finance Committee to start reporting the monthly activity of the PSAP grant from the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Department? To break down the reports, you have that number also.
That's for the control station grant?
Yes.
Yep. More the better. I mean, yeah.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll pass that on to Jim. And does the board have any, I've got one more thing. Chris and I talked about getting flash drives for the consulates that would have the standards on them. He thought maybe about $1,200. He got them. They are here. He's got one, and the cost was $800. So he's a good shopper. He did well. We're happy. And the financial plan for the 5 to 10 year plan, we need ideas. If you've got any ideas you want us to work on or things to change. And unless there are any questions, that's my report this month. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, governance. Mr. Benson.
All right, very brief meeting this month. The governance committee had 2 standards in front of it. One dealing with essentially storage of software for the system, the other dealing with creating emergency management talk groups. Other than that, very concise meeting. Questions, comments, concerns? No, thank you.
That could be me, but I'm not gonna. All right. We'll move on to operations.
Thank you. The Operations Committee did meet. They continued their conversation on legacy systems, primarily VLaw 31, and that conversation will continue. I was not at the meeting, so thank you to Vice Chair Smith for taking care of the meeting, so any questions can be directed his way. Thank you.
Okay. Explore that too. So, update on that?
Yeah, I can cover that.
Go ahead.
So, as Chair Hagan mentioned before, most recently we do have some flash drives that we ordered to store things that are pertinent to the consulates on them now. They are 16 gigabytes in size, so we can fit quite a bit of stuff on here. So the thought process is, let's put all the standards on here. If we have any training documentation, we can put that on there as well. If you think back to the Isicsb regional training that we had done, we should have access to those presentations, so we could put that on there as well. And then if we have any guidance documents or training modules out before these go out, we could put those on there as well. They are, I thought they were magnetized too. Yeah, they're magnetized, I think. Or no, maybe they're not magnetized, but they have a unique shape. I thought they were at first. Yeah, because it stuck to my laptop there, but there's a magnet right there inside of it. I thought maybe we got an extra feature at first. But they do have a unique shape so that they're easy to kind of spot. They're relatively small and compact, so they're not going to take up a lot of space on the PC also. We made sure to get some that were thin so they wouldn't take up multiple USB ports if they're stacked on top of each other. They're a little bit fatter, so they would have a wider profile. But these are in, and so we're going to give those out with the consulates as well. Yeah, I'll pass that around. So, and on the table in the right side of the room, our perspective, left side of the room for the audience, we do have an example of a consulate that is in. The Motorola's are in except for a couple of secondary orders. The Harris's, the power supplies were delivered, I think, the other day. So we have a complete unit with the Harris now. Next month, we'll probably bring the Harris in, and then the month after that, we'll bring the Kedwin in to show everybody what they're getting also, if they're not already deployed. So we have all the parts and pieces in. We're starting to actually go through and grab invoices and pay bills, so that's good also. I submitted our quarterly report also to HSEMD on Monday or Tuesday night as well. So that's the basic run of it now. Code plugs are in development. Deputy Swick Walzer's working quite a bit on that as in addition. And he's going to do some testing for us, and he's going to take one home and start the process in Cedar Rapids. We are adding some level of priority to the Ragbri route to make sure that they get their equipment soon. In addition to the Des Moines metropolitan area, they're close by. We can do some testing with them as well and make sure that they're working the way we expect them to also. So that's the basic update that I have on that. I'll take any questions.
Will there be anything additional left over from the grant that we can apply towards to help the PSAPs? Is there enough to do anything?
I'm not sure yet. We got to see how all this shakes out. I know there was some thoughts on perhaps looking around, maybe universities getting them something as well. But at this point, we're still kind of waiting for some extraneous expenses to come in. And also we got to wait to see how some of those final bills shake out. Right now, it's getting close to the bottom line. It looks like we may have somewhere between 10 and 15,000 left over after you factor in the extraneous expenses. Some things we could look at doing would be something like giving each PSAP a system key that's provisioned for their stuff, but I don't know if there'll be money to do that uniformly across the board.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, back to Chair Hagan for the outreach piece.
The new outreach regional meeting was going to do even more show and tell with talking about the mobile and the portable devices, have them there so they can see them in action instead of just, we did the council stuff and now we'll do the portables. And a roadmap working with FirstNet to coordinate outreach efforts to match the new roadmap. That meeting will be April 17th and Kyle Richardson will be there. And FirstNet Forum, finalizing logistics for Prairie Meadows, and we're pushing to increase registration numbers. Right now, we've got 65. And we're coordinating with AT&T to discuss second half of 2019 outreach goals. The meeting's to be decided. It'll be April or May. Any questions?
Is that the 29th and 30th of May at Prairie Meadows?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Do
you.
we have that flyer here for everybody to see in case you haven't seen it? We can maybe put it for people to see. Maybe we can get one printed out
That'd be good.
with the registration link. Okay, 65, huh?
Yeah.
That's over, okay. All right. Is Sean back in there behind the glass? Yeah.
Thank you, Board. So quickly, we did an Isicsb website update for the new MOA to include those docs. We did a couple other doc updates. I'm going to try and schedule some time with the SWIC to go through all the people that are listed on the website to get their color changed to approved, make sure everybody's on there who we believe is on there. I believe it's around 60 some odd applicants, members, approvals, all of that. So somewhere around, I think 62 was the last number I saw that have gone through the registration process on the website. The Isicsb website, still planning for the update to Drupal 8. That's coming, and some security changes again. We also received some comments about we need to review the website for some links and do a little bit of link auditing. It was pointed out by Larry Smith. He told me that he knows something in the newsletter the other day, so I'm going to re-audit those. Typically, I click through every link before that goes out. So as you can imagine, that newsletter, even though it's only a one page, it probably has on average 50 some odd links or more. So just making sure that all the RIC links are going where we expect them to go. The newsletter, where to find local FirstNet retailers. That's going to be a new addition this month. We worked with AT&T and they provided us a link. And I was also informed by Kyle Spies that they'll also come out to your agency. If you contact them and you're like, hey, would you come out to our agency and talk to us about FirstNet AT&T? They will do that. So with this link, you'll be able to go out, find your nearest local retailer and contact them and coordinate either coming in or if you have a large enough audience or you want to have them come and speak to your agency, they'll come do that. Not to take anything from Dustin's presentation here. Update on LTE versus LMR. I put a video in the link based on some conversations we had. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to watch that video, but hopefully that helps a little bit. I know it's always a confusing issue, but hopefully, you know, when I find videos, I try and share those to make it a little easier to have that discussion. The checklist is out there also. We made sure we're kind of pushing the checklist so that you can trust but verify your local retailer of LTE devices when you want to look at it and compare it against AT&T FirstNet. So that checklist is out there now. There's going to be, and we're working with AT&T to improve communication and info sharing to ensure that, so last month there was a little confusion, so I wanted to make sure that we're trying to make sure that we have a concise path of sharing that information, because this week we had our FirstNet broadband committee meeting, and I want to make sure that whatever updates are shared there, that we can share those as well when they come from AT&T FirstNet. So we're working on that. And the last thing is, I just wanted to comment about the road show. We had the road show last year with 4 of the 6 regions that were attended, and they were by Rhonda McKibben, and she's now since retired. So I just want to say something quick about Rhonda and just say thank you. It's going to be an interesting new road show with doing more out in the field, but it's going to be a little bit having her character and missing that from the roadshow. I just wanted to acknowledge that because she was a big help, and with her experience and background as a PSAP telecommunicator, it was a big help. And finding someone to take that spot with her flair is going to be a little bit of a challenge. So beyond that, I'll take any questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the road show, Sean. There's some regions where they haven't been visited yet to
Correct.
talk about Isicsb and FirstNet. Are there any updates on those as far as tentative dates or schedules?
Region 5 and 2 are the 2 regions. We wanted to, so right now what we're waiting for is the final connectivity, because as Ellen mentioned, we want to do the portable mobile roadshow. Region
done.
2's, I'm sorry?
It's done. You've got everything you're going to get.
Well, then I guess it's time to start scheduling, because that's all I've been waiting for is green light go. So after the FirstNet forum, that will be the hot thing, and I
Just
will.
don't go to Rock Rapids yet.
Don't go to Rock Rapids.
Right.
Well, good thing we did the northwestern corner was one of our first we did up in Sioux City, and they had at the time with our control station no problems at all. So, but I'm very excited to see a mobile portable road show. You know, with the councilette, that's one thing, but everybody wants to see, or everyone wants to talk to a trooper or an officer, someone out on the road. And hearing that radio squelch from a road person or a walking person will be pretty amazing. So that's really where I think we want to go with Roadshow 2.0.
Right, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
The participation plan update, last board meeting, we're supposed to have that updated for joining. Chris's form, there was going to
Yeah,
upload the new
that's
one.
what, yeah, the website's been updated with those
So it's
documents.
the new one's on there?
Correct. To the best of my knowledge, they were
That's the one
updated.
where with the signature versus the initials?
The 2 documents that you provided were the 2 documents that were replaced from the old version, and that was completed last week.
Okay.
I'm still testing. If someone finds that that's not working, though, please let me know. I've been very fortunate. Larry's been sending me messages, and I'm very appreciative of his diligence in making sure that everything works, because, you know, I do my best, but sometimes when you're in the weeds, you might miss something. But I typically go through step by step, line by line, and test things. So, any other questions? All right, I'm going to get back behind the glass again then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Training committee, we have an interim chair.
A training meeting was scheduled and held. Brief discussions were held on what kind of materials would be needed for the PSAPs with the consulates they are getting. There was also a scoping call with ECD regarding our technical assistance courses for 2019. We have some tentative dates and locations. Communication unit planning and policies that will be a 1 to 2 day session with the SWIC and Deputy SWIC in July. PSAP cybersecurity webinar will likely be in August. This is a webinar so everyone can attend virtually. ECD is looking into how many virtual seats are available for that. CommT training class in Clarinda in August. Skip refresher will be in September in Des Moines. Incident and tactical dispatcher training in Carroll in November. And Chris is assisting in verifying locations and specific dates. Our deferred COML class has a couple of paths. We may be able to receive a complete ECD-sponsored session, or we could opt for state-sponsored. If it were to be state-sponsored, ECD would supply all the materials and logistical support. We would need to be responsible for the instructors. And lastly, before I entertain any questions, I would like the group to know the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy will be moving within the next couple of weeks. We are relocating to 5000 West Town Parkway, which will be our new home until the academy is refurbished. And the recruits will be housed downtown in some apartments. So just so that the folks here in law enforcement are aware of that move. Any questions for me?
Are they redoing the building itself, tearing it down? Or?
They're not tearing it down. They are, right now they're doing abatement for asbestos and lead. Then they will remove some walls, reconfigure things. What you see now mostly as brick and concrete, it's my understanding there will be a lot more glass, but it will be in the same footprint.
Okay.
Okay? Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, FirstNet Broadband Committee.
Yes, we met earlier this week and had a presentation from AT&T in regards to a tower in New Albin, which is in Alameda County. AT&T presented and proved to the committee that it is part of the FirstNet build. This is all part and parcel to Iowa Code 6868C 3.14A, and that is the item that is in the action for the board. Do you want me to read that letter now or later?
Read now, then read it again.
Sure. The letter reads, pursuant to the board's action at its April 11, 2019 meeting, this letter issued in accordance with Iowa Code Section 8C 314A confirms that the tower and transmission equipment proposed for the following location is intended to be installed and used as part of the state plan approved under 47 U.S. Code Section 1442E for the deployment of the nationwide public safety broadband network and radio access network as defined in 47 U.S. Code U.S. Code Section 1401, and it is the New Albin 300-foot guide tower with the GPS coordinates provided in Alameda, and the parcel ID is also provided.
Okay. You get bored, maybe they don't understand maybe how we got here.
Sure.
Give a little, as much as you would
Yeah,
like.
absolutely. So in Alameda County at this New Albin site, AT&T worked through the local process and just the normal process for acquiring a tower of going through the tribes reviewing it. There's a name for that, and I'm drawing a blank. Can you help me, Dustin? The name of the process. I know it goes through SHPO, and it goes through a process where everyone who has any interest in the site, whether it be tribal or local, federal, it goes through a process, and it had cleared all of those hoops. It went before the local jurisdiction for permitting, and at that point, it was met with an impasse. The law was created to offer means of dealing with the impasse. The impasse, the way that the law is written is that the site is presented before the Isicsb board. The FirstNet subcommittee reviewed that in detail to ensure that the tower being proposed was part of the FirstNet system, and then brought before the board saying, yes, in fact it is. Written notification then needs to be provided to AT&T that the board has reviewed it, it is part of it, and we concur with that process of being built.
Questions on that? We can talk about it some more when it comes up for under new business, but thank you. That's good.
FirstNet.gov also shared more information about their roadmap, as well as we received an update on the forum. Any other questions or any questions for me regarding FirstNet? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Technology share update.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, we were only able to pull off one meeting because I had some other things going on. But one of the first things we did was we worked with Marty Smith. He called because he had some questions about some setup of equipment for his operations over there. So we spent about an hour assisting him with moving forward with obtaining the proper frequencies for the use that he wanted it for. We had some discussions about some subscriber testing, which I'll let Chris do that when I get done with this other stuff, because I'm more focused on some of these frequency related issues. The 700 meg air to ground channels, what we've been doing is one of the committee members took the list of frequencies that exist out there in that band, and we applied it to a spreadsheet to narrow down and eliminate as many adjacent channel conflicts that could be possible based on where Isicsb towers exist and the users who would potentially use air-to-ground channels in a regional plan. And so through all this scrubbing of these frequencies, we came up with two options that presents two conflicts across the state of Iowa. Region 1, unfortunately, has the worst when it comes to conflicts, but we got it narrowed down to just two conflicts. Now it's just an issue, which option do we want to choose? I did talk to Rob Dennard about it. I hadn't had a chance to go through it all yet, but what I'm going to do is I did push that over to operations, but then the next thing I want to do is take that plan and lay those frequencies out, add some additional wording to that, push that all over to operations and let them scrub it out and bring it back to technology. As far as the licensing of this stuff, there's some other upstream issues that need to be dealt with, and licensing those right now is a work in progress, but I don't want to do too much until all of our ducks in a row on this. So the last thing before I turn it over to Chris is the 800 meg SOA channels. I'll just say we ran into some issues, and the end result of it was we felt like we weren't going to achieve the goal that we wanted with those frequencies, and instead of trying to beg the FCC to let us keep them, we just went ahead and canceled the license. We're going to have to revisit it, go do some research on some different frequencies, or just find out maybe through technology, maybe we don't even need them at all. But, we'll move forward on it and see what's best for that. So,
What was the original intent of those frequencies? And how long ago did we apply for them?
A couple years ago. We've kind of been kicking it down the road here because when we got that license, we didn't get it. They hand them out in pairs, like repeater pairs, and we were trying to get the upper part of that frequency for direct channel analog access. So that way, if somebody came to a scene that didn't have 700 meg conventional channels in their radio, they would be able to use an 800 meg analog channel with the other agencies. Well, I shouldn't say that. If all they had was 800 meg, they would have a scene of action channel. So we'll keep working on it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
All right. Patrick's passing on the subscriber list for the website. The technology committee talked at length about that a couple of weeks ago during their meeting. And we know we have radios from various manufacturers on the system now. We know that radios from various manufacturers will work on the system that aren't on the system just yet. So we were trying to figure out a good way to help facilitate the creation of a list or guidance for people to look at and kind of see what's on the system now. And through a lot of debate, we kind of landed on the idea that it would probably be best to ask agencies that are on the system now to see what they're using, brand, model, and then also the type of flash code that's in the radios, and then post that somewhere on the website, assuming we can mine that data. And then that what that would tell people is that if I get a radio from manufacturer A, these are the feature sets that I want to make sure that are in that radio. And that's important because with manufacturer B, those feature sets may be slightly different. They might be grouped differently and come with different packages. So the technology committee is looking at a good way to start mining that data so we can post that on the website. Again, we're open to all kinds of different subscribers being on the system. As of today, at least from what I'm aware of, we have Motorola, Harris, Kenwood, and Tate on the system already. I know BK Realm is very interested since they have customers in the state also in putting some of their radios on the system. So far, it looks like we're going to have a very mixed system as far as end user subscriber units. So we've been working on that process. We don't quite have a good methodology established just yet for mining that data, but over time, I'm sure that'll be developed, and then we'll have that list on the website as soon as we can.
I know we've been working on this for quite some time, even when Swick Allen was here.
Yes.
How about best practices in other states? What are other states doing? Do we have to reinvent the wheel on this? Or, 'cause
Well,
we're probably the last one that's done a state
Yes.
system. So there's got to be some examples out there.
Yep.
I know the armor system is similar, pretty much exactly like what we have.
Yep, and it all depends on what those states want to do. So, for example, with some states, with regarding their different configurations, they will look for a specific feature, whether it's some sort of data thing or whatever. They look at the base things that it takes to push to talk and let up to listen, but then they may also have some other unique needs, and they actually test the radios for that. Technology committee basically said, listen, we don't necessarily want to get in the bit business of radio testing. We just want to let people know that if they buy this, the push to talk, let up to listen will work. Other states do have established list of subscribers, but a lot of those lists that are out there are primarily exclusive to phase 1 systems as opposed to a phase 2 system. So we can pull what they've done already, but we do have to kind of be careful because there may be some nuances between the phase 1 versus phase 2, and that's what we're trying to be careful of. I think the expectation is that most all of those are going to work, but we don't know for sure yet because we haven't necessarily had all those models on the system yet or in hand to test. So if it seems like we're kind of being very pragmatic with it, that's why. We don't necessarily want to pull a list from, say, Michigan and say it'll work, and then we realize that, well, there's a feature set that works the way they expect it to in FDMA, but maybe not TDMA. The good news for us is that the TDMA cap testing is wrapping up and all those testing documents are being posted, and manufacturers have actually sent us those documents, so we can say with some level of confidence that subscriber units we get will work. But until we get some stuff on the system, it's hard to be certain 100% that things are going to work the way we expect them to. So kind of where we'll end up with this, assuming it plays out the way we think it will, is we'll have a list of radios that we know are on the system with their flash code, and then advise potential users that if you want to look at this new flashy radio that was just released by a manufacturer, here's a link to the cap testing website, see if it's there, and if it's there, then good deal, talk to your manufacturer, these are the feature sets you want to have in it, and then we'll go from there.
So you mentioned BK Realm.
Yes.
You don't have any of those?
Not that I'm aware of yet.
So let's say they want to be on it.
Yep.
How are we going to handle that? How's the UGC going to handle approval for that if we don't have a list prior to saying that it's okay?
So that's kind of where the CAP program comes in, and in our standard, it mentions the CAP program specifically. BK Realm tests all their stuff through the CAP program like the other manufacturers do. They have to if they want to be grant compliant. And the tests with the CAP program for 2017, the Compliance Assessment Bulletin, were all done on Astro 717 systems, which is what ours is. So with the radios that they have that would be eligible to be on the system, we've seen that documentation. We know that they've passed. It's just making sure that that flash code is set up appropriately so that they have all the feature sets they need to access.
Based on that, it looks like BKL, if they had those, you could allow them on.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I think you've already kind of answered you've already established your list.
Yeah, we have the CAP program to fall back on, but the CAP program doesn't necessarily say this is the flash code that you would need. It basically looks at, basically it tests how messages are passed from the end user radios through the system out to any other radios. So it looks more so at the messaging of the radios with certain feature sets, but it doesn't necessarily say what is the flash code that's needed, because some manufacturers do it differently. You know, you could buy a radio that in the past, and this has come up, that may have said, okay, I will work in trunking, but it left out the 9600 baud data channel, or it may not have the TDMA features, or it may not have the FDMA features. So that's kind of what we're trying to be careful of, because those things aren't all just exclusively grouped together. You could go to a radio manufacturer and say, I want a radio that can do that can do trunking, but there's several different configurations available for that.
I would rather, as a person that wants to join or entity, have a list that I know I can get on. I don't want to slow anybody down.
Okay.
Because we don't have our process, and we've got a system about ready to be turned on, but we don't have a approved list of radios yet. So I would encourage, get all the help you can, get it done as quick as you can. And I could be looking at that the wrong way, but I think we need that list done ASAP.
Okay.
It has been lingering for quite a while. I'm open to suggestions, but I just don't want to slow anybody down, or prevent anybody because we don't have a list.
Okay.
We're just trying to be cautious.
Yeah, I get it.
It seems like it's getting, dragging on, but.
Yeah. All right.
Would this list be viewed as a minimum requirements?
As far as the flash code?
The flash code, correct.
Yeah, it'd probably be listed as minimum. It wouldn't lock anybody into saying, well, if I want to go beyond, if I want the flashy feature set as opposed to just the bare minimum, they could go beyond that. It doesn't lock anybody into kind of stopping there, if they don't want to. It's designed to be as open as it possibly can be.
Good?
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Leah, committee? Connie? Here? Oh, there she is.
The lead committee, we discussed the distribution and the training of the consulates, and that would be projected to be done by May 15th-ish. And that would be a task done by the SWIC right now and the co-SWIC. They're also planning on having some training dates and also statewide training. Those dates have not been discussed. We don't know what they'll be coming later. Well, we also discussed the LEA decommissioning, and those discussions will begin about January of 2020. We also talked about the importance of these discussions and the work being done by the joint efforts of everyone. We also talked about the difference between the co-location sites and the non-co-location sites, and how we would propose doing those that would be most beneficial for everyone. The tower challenges was also an area that we looked at very intensely, because revolving around the telephone company circuit failures and the maintenance issues, we do not have support for the aged equipment, and we're having challenges trying to find replacement equipment. So the equipment failures are going to cause a challenge. So in the April meeting that we'll have next week, we'll continue talking about the timelines and how we're going to assist everybody in and throughout this conversion. Any questions?
Sheriff, you have anything?
No, just on another note, we were looking for one of those old radio guides, and we actually did find one. I have an intern that's copying it right now, and I'll get that to Connie. It's interesting. It wasn't everything I hoped it would be, but it kind of went back to what LEA was designed for, and I thought at the time that it was important, since we were replacing something, that we understood that thing that we were replacing, and it does do a little bit of that. So I think it's a document that was probably created in either the end of the 60s or early 70s. It's pretty interesting, and you think about this was probably introduction to radio for some agencies. It was probably all they had was LEA.
yeah.
So it's interesting, but perhaps you'll find it useful, perhaps you won't, but it will be available.
Good conversation piece, right?
Yeah.
I will come to your committee to clear up a few things, but I want to clear up the major one is when Connie says the decommissioning is a fearful word, and also January 2020 has to be taken as the start of looking at it. It could take 3 years from January of 2020, for all I know. That is not the date that the switch gets flipped, so to speak, okay? So I'll come back to the committee and make sure and get that clear, but that's not the intent here. But we do have to, I think you do have to set some type of a timeline, so you just don't sit there and, but you have, and if you don't meet that timeline, set another one, you know. But establish something. It was the intent of trying to make people understand that.
Right. Thank you.
Sheriff Roddard, in your document, did you discover whether or not Leah TAC is still an advisory committee? Or maybe Lieutenant Lampy can answer. Is that still around?
That was formed at the pleasure of the commissioner at the time to look into interoperability with Leah. I don't know if you can even find it in the code. It may still be in the code, but it's just it was a commissioner appointed a study group, so to speak. It may still be in there. It may still be not. I don't know. I haven't looked for a couple of years. I did a few years
And I
back.
have not read it cover to cover, so I have not noticed that, but it could be there. But I've just in the way the thing's set up, I kind of doubt it's going to be mentioned there.
When the operations committee was talking about that, the law 31, I think it was, we went back to a document that talked about the attack, and we didn't know if that was still an active advisory committee or.
From what I understand, the committee at the time was formed to study that, and then the board, if you go way back, that kind of morphed into the back in 2004. Then there was a study, then the interoperability board was created in 2007, and that kind of just drifted away because the board is now.
Right. So we were just trying to figure out, is the Isicsb board, is that more, did it absorb that Leah TAC responsibility? And we didn't know if it was still in
I'm pretty
Iowa
sure
code.
that's the way. I think it's still in there, but the history of it is that's
right.
The way it flowed. And now, of course, 80, 20, and 29 establishes the board since 2007. But if you look in the Iowa code, you may find Leah TAC somewhere, the word. If you PDF, just do a Control F, you may find it.
Yeah.
But it will say in there about at the commissioner's
Okay.
request form.
That's cool. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, we're on to other reports. I'll open it up to the board members for any information sharing you'd like to. I always go first, so I'll let somebody else go this time.
Hello, Dave Ness from Des Moines. I just wanted to inform people that are not part of the board that there was an email that came out, it's been a few weeks ago by now, from Chair Lampy. He had been contacted by ISSDA seeking a reconsideration of the board's position on ISSI. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase here, but what I responded to the board upon seeing that email was a desire to, yes, in fact, try to or commit to look into whether ISSI or other technologies would be best enable different systems to communicate with each other. But my primary concern is we aren't yet fully accepted operational on with the Isicsb plan, and therefore I think it may be a bit premature. And so I guess I had asked Tom or Chris if you have an idea. I think ISSDA comes with status, and we certainly need to respond to them. I also think that it's been so exciting just in the last couple of years that, yes, this Isicsb program is developing greatly, but there's also other counties that are going other directions. And we do need to look at interoperability, whichever system people are using. So I think, in my opinion, I think absolutely we need to commit to, yes, be part of a conversation. I'm just leery of doing it right now when we have so many folks doing so many different things. And so if you've got a sense that, yeah, within 6 months we'll stand something up and we could communicate with them. If they came to us, it's my belief or view that we should respond to them offering something. So just the perspective of one board member, and I'd be happy to hear some comments or make a motion, whatever the board's consensus is.
Well, I don't think we need to make a motion or anything. We can discuss it, but I think you have to go back to the original intent of what we did, what the board approved, and why they did it, and then how long and then discuss it, do it through a committee at that, when we're ready, okay? But I agree with you on, same way with the encryption. Can we get the car running down the road for a little while first? Most of Iowa hasn't even used trunked before. This is all new. And I'm all for bettering the system. If it does, when we revisit it again, if the technology is there, but I believe at the time it was because of some standards and it's not quite ready for our comfort level is the way I took it, but I could be wrong, but I am not gonna stop researching or recommend we don't research it anymore, but I do recommend, my opinion is that we drive the car a while based on what you were saying. Before we get used to what we're even using for, because it's complex. It's not just a black box that you plug 2 wires in and they talk to each other and everything works just fine. There's more to it than that. A lot of stuff.
I'm the furthest from an expert on ISSI or any other technology related to these radio systems. But it was 2017, so less than 2 years ago, that we had a full briefing from Swick Allen and I think Swick Myers as well. And we brought in national leaders, as I understand. We made a comprehensive look into that. I'm hopeful that things have changed and developed, but yeah, I guess as long as we're comfortable telling them that yes, we'll continue monitoring and we will take a look down the road, I'm certainly that would meet my goal and expectation, because we've got wonderful people that are joining it at various levels of users, but we have others that aren't. And we need to, whether it's through consulates, whether it's through other technologies that may be related, or the ISSI, I think we need to continue moving this, but we can't jeopardize the successful rollout of the system that's here in the 11th hour at this point to shift focus and maybe create more confusion. So that would be my thought.
And I think the other important thing, I think our duty as the board is to make sure it benefits everyone, every PSAP, everybody on the street, not just this small section of either Western or Northern or it's got to benefit everyone, and it has to work. It may work someplace else, but it's got to work here on our stuff. There may be uses out there that may be working just fine, but that doesn't mean you just jump on and go. But I'm open to anything, and I'll turn it over if somebody else wants to say something. Go ahead.
One thought I have on it is that I think we just need to work through a priority plan of, are we going to look at dealing with legacy systems and legacy interoperability solutions and bring them onto the current plan? Or are we going to take other operable systems and figure out how to connect to them? Are we going to take care of yesterday's stuff and get it to today's standard? Or are we going to look at what's here today and get those connected? And it's just a matter of priority. I think they both need to be addressed, but I'm not sure that we have the capacity to address them both at the same time.
I think this is where each agency really needs to do a little soul searching, because what you have and what I have may not be the same. And so, and you've already got interoperability built in right now because you got an ICS 217A that says, here, you use these frequencies, if nothing else, just as an example. So you as a user need to do that individual soul searching before you can put too much expectation on one person or a group of people. And I agree. Yeah, you can go and, we'll do the research and all that, but you should really come to the table knowing what you have before you make sense. I guess that's my 2 cents.
Well, I think we're off to a great start with the control stations. I see that as a benefit for everybody, even if you have a VHF, to at least minimal access here. Simple patching, and then just grow into it. But technology changes yearly, so there's something that's great out there, we'll look at it. As long as we can talk and it works.
I believe that 80% of us, probably even more than that, would probably claim that we're not techie enough people to actually understand this stuff down in the weeds, so to speak. And that was kind of the reason why the vetting process that we had before, using TIA, TR8, to come up with the recommendation through that memo that Dave was talking about. We're using those experts outside of what we are here to come back and talk about whether or not the ISSI was going to work eloquently with the Isicsb platform. And I think that it would only be prudent for us to think that anything that would come forward later on, that we would use our involvement with TR8, TIA to go through that again, and have Patrick actually spearhead a lot of that, being the technology guy. So, but serious, in all honesty, we should use the path that we've used in the past. It's worked for us in the past that way. I think it should work that way again.
I would agree with Jason's comments. I would simply add that if you bring in that local flavor of those people that are wanting to do those ISSIs, you're going to get a lot better understanding. They're going to intricately know their systems. And representing sheriff's offices, we appreciate the board's opinion on it and the willingness to move forward with it and relook at it. We're just hoping to get those discussions underway and not necessarily implement it sooner rather than later, because we are understanding that the Isicsb system is new, and for those growing into it, it takes some time to get to use it. That's our position. Thank you.
Okay, as DPS, we've completed 4 dry runs now with our dispatch centers, and we have invited to each one of those the local public safety. It's designed around what I used as a demonstration was an 80-20 scenario. 80% of the scenario was geared toward our communication specialists getting used to the patching into a LEA or a regional or a statewide. And then also the simple stuff is simply going on the air on one channel and then they get pushed to another one. We learned that isn't going to work so well. We're used to calling towers when we go 1041 or anything like St. Mary's, Des Moines, Merrill, Terrell. We got 28 of them, right? That's how troopers and agents communicate with dispatch. In the future, when we start using for our use, we're going to be calling communication centers, and there's only 4. You got Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls, and Cedar Rapids. So that for us, that's a learning curve. For trunking alone is a big learning curve, but for calling just centers now and not towers is another training issue. The last one we had at Des Moines, we had over 40 people there. We had DNR, Westcom, Marshalltown, a lot of good representation. It was well received, and the success story from the Cedar Rapids one, after we taught them how to patch and communicate on the system with the old and the new, I'm going to get this story right here, but there was a highway helper vehicle that witnessed a drunk driver and they were on a frequency over in the Cedar Rapids area, and our dispatcher simply patched his traffic into the regional and or the Leah, and they got him stopped pretty quickly. So that was a great example of, we just left training on how to patch, and you get an incident and it worked. So on the way here, there was a pursuit coming from Adair County that I was listening to, and I was told that and I have to follow up on it, but our communication specialists were patching it into the new pursuits just to do it. Not that anybody was listening or hear it, but patching it in so we could interop with the car that was pursuing, and that's all I really know about that piece. As far as the FirstNet side with DPS, I switched 20 of our phones in my bureau, with my people's phones, to the FirstNet AT&T network. So we're giving that a shot, and so far works very well. And I think you've got some demos also from the broadband committee that you're using, aren't you? Did they give you some?
I personally have one.
Okay.
And yes, if you work with Kyle Spees, he will get you demo equipment. No question, just get it. And if you have areas that you want investigated, he and his team will go out and investigate those areas and get to the bottom of why coverage isn't available in a particular area.
We also have, we used to have hotspots for our comm centers that run the weather information, because we don't want it going through our DPS network, so I use hotspots. And so I also got 4 hotspots, or 5 of them, to run our weathers at our center. So everywhere we got is good coverage, so pretty pleased. Understanding that there's better to come. That's all I got. Anybody else? All right. I think Motorola's up. Melvin, give us an update.
Cable here.
All right, does everybody see it? Perfect. All right, as we get closer to the end, these presentations are getting smaller and smaller. And I'll be eliminating animations, which is very sad, but 60 bullet points. All right, so there's been a lot of activity, so now I'm just focusing on the actions taken from last time to now. The big one was the core upgrade. So we've actually upgraded the core to be at the latest and greatest software release. And I have an asterisk there because this was so much more than just an upgrade. It was a major event. We actually installed new cores and then upgraded all the hardware. We physically moved stuff between 2 shelters. We had to coordinate with system users because system is actively being used, Westcom, Woodbury, and a whole bunch of different dispatch centers as well, including state assets, local assets, city assets, and whatnot. So there was a lot of coordination. We set up a bridge where we opened up the bridge and let everybody call in, and we sort of did a countdown to confirm that there was no active incidents because we were going to, in essence, interrupt service to be able to do this. So this upgrade was unique in that it wasn't just an upgrade. There was a lot of cleanup work. There was confirmation that the paths are connecting to the right destinations. There was a lot of remapping that took place. So it was a huge event. We had a lot of people working in 3 core locations. We couldn't quite fit inside the shelters because there were so many of us, so we kind of stand outside. It didn't rain, which was great. So definitely a major milestone, which kind of gets minimized because, well, we just call it a core upgrade. All right, so after we completed that, we did the software push, which means that after we deal with everything related to the core, then we push new software to all the RF sites. Again, that was a coordinated event from the technical perspective in order to get it at the right time. You push it, you verify, you confirm it comes up. So a lot of effort in doing the software upgrades to the sites as well. We completed some additional logging integration. We had a restore service to all the loggers. Again, there's many dispatch centers that are connected to Isicsb right now. They use their logging recorders are attached to it. So we had to, as part of that, restart some of the processes and whatnot to make sure that everybody was logging correctly. So now, all the dispatches, all the dispatch centers are able to use all the conventionals that they have attached to their dispatch centers, as well as the trunk resources. Not everybody uses them, right? Because we don't have a accepted system yet, but other locals do use them. So again, big task. Another aspect of the actions that we took was that we exercised what we call the dynamic system resiliency, which is the ability of the system to survive a catastrophic event. We, in essence, we forced a switch over. So once we completed the upgrade, we switched everybody over to the backup core, which is dynamically in a totally different area of the state. We did some additional testing and some cleanup work as well, and then we switched everybody back. And then by accident, we stumbled across something that caused a power outage, which ended up having the system revert back to the backup core, so it kind of tests itself in the process. We had a lot of people working, a lot of folks doing many things at the same time, so that was just an oversight in our part that we ended up killing power to some of the core equipment, which basically forced the system to take over. It took us a couple of minutes to realize what had happened, but then we realized, oh, okay, worked, great. So that was another aspect of that, and then we released the database as of Monday. The database release was another milestone, a significant milestone, but it went a little bit slower than expected because a lot of folks want access to the database. Everybody kind of jumped in at the same time. And we had to restore logging credentials. So that was part of the upgrade, is that all that stuff gets wiped out. So we had to restore all the credentials so that folks would have access to the database. When they would fail, they would try again, and it just puts them on a queue, which kept on going. So we had to put a stop to it, restore everything, and then bring it back up again. So the database is now released, and you can start adding more radios. So now the long haul is we have to go to every dispatch center that's attached to the system and upgrade every operator position. What that involves is the computers that serve for the operator position. We have to upgrade them to the latest and greatest operating system. So Windows 10 dot whatever it is right now, but that's part of the process. And once the operating system is upgraded, then the application software gets downloaded as well. So we do that one position at a time, and it takes about 3 hours to do one computer. So it's a slow and painful process, which we have already started with Des Moines DPS yesterday, and we expect to be done by the end of today. That includes network management, terminals, and logger interface computers as well. So we're doing that, again, not just DPS, but Westcom, Woodbury, Dallas, Harrison, anybody who has connection to the core. basically has to go through this process as well. And the other piece is, another component to this is a separate box that has to be updated as well, which is the alarm monitoring equipment. So that's sort of a system that's on the side of the system, if you will. So once we upgraded the communication system itself, then we have to go in and just refresh the software in the alarm monitoring system, which is a box at every site as well. This is different than a system release. It's just software that we want to make sure that every piece of software is up to date in addition to the Motorola product itself. So what remains? The two sites, Hardin, which is an operational site, we're working with the city to finish up the landscaping plan for that particular site. Hopefully by the time we're done, all the rain will have stopped and we'll be able to move quickly on that. And then the Rock Rapids site, which we have a preliminary approval for the placement. So we just have to conduct a site walk up there. So make sure everybody knows where we can walk, where we can't walk, and the safety procedures and all that stuff. We have to restart the coverage testing. And then we have to obviously complete every dispatch position upgrade for the dispatch centers that are attached to the core. So that's the process that we already started. We just have to finish it. Another piece of this is we want to finish also is we want to refresh every backhaul node. A couple of weeks ago, we did the primary nodes, which are the 3 core locations. So now it's the same deal. We got to push software to the MPLS router that sits at the site and then reset it. Again, it's a process that's separate, but we're going to be doing that so that we can complete and we can say that every piece of hardware that's in Isicsb will have the latest and greatest software in it. We have to complete the remaining generator startups. So we're about 25% right now, so we have to do the remaining 75% of the generators throughout the state. And then we have to complete the onboarding process. The onboarding process is where the customer support manager works with our techs and different entities to confirm what happens every time an alarm is triggered. So at a site, what do you want us to do when the fire alarm triggers? What do you want us to do when the door is open? What do you want us to do when the LP tank is low? What do you want us to do when there's a failure with the UPS or the battery is low or the generator didn't start up? All these different things, it goes down to a list per site because every site can be different, right? You can have, you might want to dispatch a deputy sheriff in one location, but a state patrol in a different location. So every site will have different needs, so we want to make sure that we cover those. So that's part of the onboarding process. And then we have to execute the acceptance test plan, which is very similar to the testing that we did when we staged the system in Chicago, which is, can you do talk groups? Can you do multi-talk groups? Can you patch calls together? Can you do wide area, short range, fail-soft, site trunking, all these different modes that you get to try out, simulate a failure of the core, have it switch over, which we kind of tested by accident, all those kinds of things so that we can go down and basically a huge checklist say, yep, we tested that, we tested that, we tested that. That's all I had. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, we're on to FirstNet.
Good morning, Dustin Blythe with AT&T. Update on FirstNet sites. Since last month, we have 3 new sites in Van Buren County, Farmington, Cantrell, and Keosauqua, and then one more site went live in rural Lynn County in Central City. And I talked to our Cover 2, who is building, our partner, who's building the sites, and we have another 70 in various stages of construction. So, as of today.
How long is it taking you to put up one?
You know, I don't know on that, Tom.
They
I
just
can get the-
monopoles or?
I can get the answer for you. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
So that's the FirstNet update. Any
Alright.
questions?
So give me the cities again.
Okay, so yeah, it was heavy Van Buren County. So Farmington, which is just west of Fort Madison. Cantrill was also in Van Buren County, Keosauqua. And then the one in Lynn County was Central City.
Okay. All right, thanks. Jim, you're up.
Good morning. Just have a couple of things for you this month. This week, ECD released the 2019 SAFECOM grant guidance for emergency communications. This informs potential grantees of requirements in order to receive Homeland Security grant funding for communications. It also informs all of the other federal agencies, some 19 different grant programs, and literally hundreds of opportunities each year. No significant changes, but pay attention to those. Those have far-reaching implications about compliance. They're released just before typically the Homeland Security Grant Program Notice of Funding opportunity is posted. Just in time for RAGBRAI, U.S. Cellular has informed us they are now going to waive wireless priority service fees for both activation and per minute cost. That's timely with RAGBRAI coming up and being largely rural this year. U.S. Cellular now joins the 4 major national carriers, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile, in completely waiving any cost for wireless priority service for public safety. A second Department of Homeland Security app has passed the FirstNet App Store review. The eNIFOG now joins the AUXFOG. When we say it passes the App Store, that means it's been reviewed by FirstNet.gov and particularly FirstNet.com for security compliance, and those apps are still delivered through the traditional app stores, Google Play and Apple app stores. Couple of things related to All Hazards Communications Unit training. There will be a regional COM-L, Communications Unit Leader, train the trainer class later this year. We are tentatively targeting Kansas City, most likely in the November timeframe. That is a 3-day class for experienced, recognized, or credentialed COM-Ls to be certified as an instructor for COM-L training. As we continue to push more and more of these courses to be state delivered, it would be great if Iowa could get some people in that. As of today, I believe you only have 2 individuals who can teach COM-L at the state-sponsored level, and that's a pretty heavy lift because they also happen to be COM-T instructors. There will be a COM-L regional training opportunity. I believe I briefed last week, and Chris mentioned possibility that we would repurpose a previously announced ECD-supported class to be delivered in Iowa. That looks like that will be approved, and I'll be working with Swick Myers to put something together for a timeline on that. Again, later this year, probably after the SCIP refresh and so forth. Last thing I wanted to mention to you, I've talked before about the Information Technology Services Unit Leader, the ITSL, which is the IT component of the next generation communications section. We talk about how IT influences and supports communications and the need to involve people with specific IT skill sets in the delivery of all hazards communication support. The challenge is finding those people who want to be involved, want to learn NIMS, are willing to be deployed. We're supporting 12 classes across the U.S. this year. 4 have already been delivered with good feedback. We're learning a lot. We now have 7 ECD recognized instructors, and there will be additional opportunities on both coasts, New York City, DC, Boston, LA, San Francisco, along with some other regional classes. I would encourage you, if you know someone in IT who is interested, you can talk to the Deputy Swick who attended one of the Train the Trainer classes, or to Chris to get more information. It's not an easy lift. ITSL is going to be a future-looking thing, but it's very eye-opening at the complexity of what we're teaching. Believe that is all I have for today. I will caution you that as you talk about ISSI, just yesterday I was in a regional meeting where we talked about LTE broadband gateways attaching to statewide systems. Be thinking about what people do on an ad hoc basis and how it affects your wide area systems. They're great resources, they're quick to deploy, they're handy, but understand the consequences. This is why it is so critical that you have those trained COMLs and COMTs that can go, hey, I'm here, we can support this, or hey, I wouldn't recommend you try that at this time. In this particular incident, we discovered an entity, and not involving LTE, but two dissimilar technologies. Organization said, yes, let's try this. For a month, they had 23,000 push-to-talk minutes on two linked systems where it was supposed to be a test of 3 days. It's a little more than 3 days duration, and suddenly we went, wait, how did that happen? So this is why policies and procedures and regulatory stature to say, hey, let's not do this without a COML or a COMT or somebody being in the know is so critical to your system's success. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Okay, Standards Working Group. I think Swick Myers is handling this one.
Yeah. So at the last standards meeting, we went through 6 standards. We sent 2 to governance. We did table quite a few of them from last time pending further research, such as like a National Weather Service type standard where we talk about National Weather Service talk groups and such. The ones that did get moved up include software location, where it should be stored, and the establishment of some emergency management talk groups to help with the facilitation of bringing in resources and things like that on a relatively regional or in some cases statewide scale. So we'll probably start also looking at some standards that have already been approved by the board, just to kind of give them a once over before things get accepted with the system to make sure that they're in a good place before we go live with this thing also. Because we have learned some things over the past few weeks that may need to be incorporated into those documents. Otherwise, that's it.
Okay, thanks. There is no old business. We'll move right on to new business. Cameron Stufflebeam, is he here?
Oh, he is not.
Okay.
He could not come.
Okay. We'll move on. We have a certificate for a COML leader here.
I can get it to him.
Okay, thank you. User Group Committee Chair Buffington's in his absence. It looks like we have some levels to approve here today. Cherokee, FEMA Region 7, Fremont, Ida, and Warren. Going to need an update from either, is Rob still here? So I need a motion if we're going to approve these. Andy usually makes those motions, so.
I'll make that motion to approve the list that includes Cherokee County as a level 2, FEMA Region 7 as a level 1. He's in the back of the room. Fremont County, level 4, Ida County update to level 2, and Warren County update to add more radios as a level 3.
Okay, I have a motion from Marty for those 5 to be added. Do I have a second?
Second by Casper.
Second by Casper. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. New Isicsb standard approval governance, Chair Benson. Are you going to take care of that?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2 as listed, software location and emergency management talk groups.
Motion by David Ness for software location, emergency management talk group policies. Second? Hagan's second. Any further discussion? Okay. Roll call, please. Holly.
Okay. Jeff Swearingen. Aye. Patrick Gutbike.
Abstain.
David Anderson. What's that?
Okay.
Right here. Marty Smith,
Aye.
Tom Lampy,
Aye.
John Benson, he stepped out. Jeff Franklin. Andy Buffington, Ellen Hagan,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Ness, Jason Leonard, Rob Broder,
Aye.
Michael Casper,
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith, Larry Smith.
Aye.
Angela's gone, so.
Motion passes. Thank you. Open up for public comment if anybody'd like to join.
Want to do first now?
Oh, sorry. I want to get out of here. It's noon. FirstNet Tower, Alameda County.
Do you want me to
Back
reread
to
it?
you. Yeah, let's reread it for the motion if you'd like to make a motion.
Yep.
Fine. Are you already? Okay, that's fine. No matter.
all right.
Whatever you want to do.
Yep. Yep. So I make a motion based on the prior reading of the letter to authorize Chair Lamping to sign to provide the authorization for AT&T.
Question. I'm not really sure if I clearly understand. What are we giving them permission to do here?
The letter is saying that the site that they are proposing is part of the FirstNet process. That's what the law says. And it needs to be signed off by the board.
So I guess I don't understand, why is there a need for the board to intervene? I'm missing something here.
The law was, go
I
ahead.
need help on the
Go ahead.
development of the
Jump in
law.
real quick. Okay, first of all, I'm Dustin with AT&T. So cover 2 is Congress, when they passed the FirstNet law, said 18% of the work needs to be done by rural telcos. Okay, so technically, it wasn't AT&T that was in front of the Planning and Zoning Committee up there. It was cover 2, which is based out of Monona, Iowa. Okay, the original tower was approved. Okay, and then the county said, well, we didn't notice it right to the public, so we have to go back through the process. And at that point, after they had gotten, what Michelle said, they had gotten 31 tribes to sign off on it, Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Wildlife, SHPO, found a landowner who would take it. It was denied 3-2 because the neighbors said it would be obnoxious to look at, okay? At that point, they had to make a decision, okay? They'd already sunk almost $100,000 into this site. Okay, they had looked at 2 other sites that SHPO rejected. So they came to us like, okay, what are our options here? We either go to district court, and that's going to be tied up for a couple of years, or can we try to pass a law for this particular site? Well, that's what we did. Now, when you can't pass a law to target one specific county. So the way that was written was any county under 15,000. In practical purposes, this is probably not going to be used anywhere else. But that's what it is. So the way the legislature approved it was, as long as the site is not in a residential area, which it isn't, this is an unincorporated area, we can show that's part of the FirstNet build, okay, and then that SHPO approved it, okay, as long as all the law says that this board needs to attest to those 3 things, and a letter goes up to the Planning and Zoning Board. That's really why we're here. One other issue. With Alameda County, 80% of the county, because they have blufflands up there, is off limits to towers, okay? So this is why this is really unique. We're not having this issue at any other county, but when you have 80% of the county off limits, it really limits where cover 2 can go. And when you try to find a tower site, you gotta have access to power and fiber. And that just isn't everywhere. So that's why we came up where we came up. So we agreed to lend them a hand, and that's why we're here.
So that's what, through the FirstNet Broadband Committee, you gave them the plans, that was all, been through all the process, verified all that, so all we're doing is confirming based off your information that it's a FirstNet site. That's all we're approving.
Can I have just a follow-up question? So just so I'm clear, if this should happen again, and it sounds like it probably won't, but if it would happen again, would this be a venue where the people who were opposing it would appear to give their case, or are we just simply confirming that it is just for FirstNet and we are not part of some open forum where complainers can come in and voice their concerns to us?
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, the debate on this has already happened at the legislature. But there was ample opportunity for, I mean, it went through the House, it had committee meetings on both sides. And, I mean, Chair Myers, or Swick Myers and I had went up to a meeting, almost a year ago?
Yeah, it was in December of 2017.
So there's been ample back and forth.
I think if there was people that came here, all we're here to do is confirm it's a FirstNet site.
That was my question.
You
So
bet.
this wouldn't really be the venue for people to come and picket and say, no, not on our land or anything like that. That's done
Right.
somewhere else. Right. All right.
Well, they could, but.
Yeah, to your point, they still
they
could,
could, yeah.
but it's, yeah.
And
It's a
that's
free
why we
country.
run it through the broadband committee to confirm that it is a legitimate FirstNet site.
And my concern would be that, it sounds like this was an eyesore type issue, but, there could be a time where maybe it was a historic site where they didn't want to impact a historic site. And so I understand there are going to be times where they're going to argue over where towers can go based on other things. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't part of that mix.
No, and then quite honestly, if SHPO says, no, we're done. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a site up there that worked for everybody, but on one of the trails, you would have been able to see the tower, so SHPO denied it.
We went through the same thing. I was at many Board of Adjustment hearings with our sites, same issue.
Yeah.
We had to get permits for everything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. I just didn't want to vote on something I didn't understand, so
Yep.
sorry for the rest of you since I didn't understand.
That's why we have votes, right? Okay, so we have a motion from David Ness. Do I have a second?
I think I made the motion and David seconded.
Oh, you seconded it. Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, this is Larry Smith. I'd like to share some thoughts on this as well, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Hey, yesterday I called up there to Alameda County to find out, hey, what's the background on this, and so they could share with me what they felt went bad or good in this whole process. First off, they feel that if during the application process, if FirstNet would have been included in an emphasis, it may have set a different tone. And this is just I'm not trying to spark a debate here. There were some offers on elevation adjustments. The site could have been moved possibly a half a mile. It wouldn't have got to this point. And there was a close 3-2 vote, but they opted, or the whole process, the appeal process wasn't utilized. Overall, they feel very disappointed that it got to this. They feel very targeted, and the home rule is definitely lost in this matter, and their concern is any precedents in other matters in the future. So those are my overall comments on this matter.
Hey, Larry, this is Chris. I was at that meeting. I believe it was December 2017. I'll have to look at my notes again. But I gave them an overview of FirstNet and what it is, what it's being built out for, and what it's designed to do at length. I would almost say ad nauseum. So I'm not sure if it's totally genuine to say that the concept of FirstNet was never presented at any one given time. I think I should look back at my notes, but I know I spoke for at least about a half hour on it during that meeting that I was at in that winter time frame. So they were aware of what this tower was for, but I just want to make that clear to the board.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to make a debate out of this. This is just kind of the takeaway from the conversation I had yesterday.
And I understand that, but I think we're bound by the legislature that just passed that we have to confirm it was a FirstNet tower. And that's what our job is to do, and I think we've got we're up for discussion, so now I'm going to take a roll call for that.
Jeff Swearingen. Aye. Patrick Updike.
Aye.
David Anderson.
Abstain.
Marty Smith.
Aye.
Tom Lampy.
Aye.
John Benson. Oh, he's gone. Jeff Franklin. Andy Buffington, Ellen Hagan,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Ness, Jason Leonard, Rob Rotter,
Aye.
Michael Casper,
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith, and Larry Smith.
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Now we're on to public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, this is the time. Okay, motion for adjournment, please. Second, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.